While new technologies can deliver rich dividends, they can also be exploited. As I said earlier, terrorists and spies are early adopters. We see the same thing with end-to-end encryption. In recent years, tech companies have significantly expanded and extended their use of encryption. And from what the industry is saying, they plan to expand its use even further. Encryption is clearly a good thing, a positive for our democracy and our economy. It protects privacy, it enables communications and transactions. But at the same time, it also protects terrorists and spies, saboteurs and the abhorrent criminals Reece will talk about. Even ASIO's most unsophisticated targets routinely use secure messaging apps and virtual private networks to avoid detection and hide their activities. In 2021, I revealed that encryption damages coverage in nearly 97% of our counter-terrorism cases. That impact is now worse. It's virtually 100% in both our priority counter-terrorism and counter-espionage cases. There is a very clear and well-established legal framework that allows ASIO to seek warrants to access communications. This process is subject to strict safeguards and is overseen for legality and propriety by the Inspector-General of Intelligence Security, who has powers to a Royal Commission. If the Attorney-General is satisfied that a matter meets a specific security threshold and our proposed access is sufficiently targeted and proportionate, they can grant a warrant that allows us to access and intercept a letter from a suspected terrorist or spy, or lawfully intercept a phone call, or lawfully intercept an email. But even when that warrant allows us to lawfully intercept an encrypted communication, we cannot actually read it without the assistance of the company that owns and operates that app. The company has to be willing and able to give effect to our warrant. Today, I'm urging the tech companies to work with us to resolve this challenge. Let me be absolutely clear. I'm not calling for an end to end-to-end encryption. I'm not asking for new laws. I'm not asking for new powers. I'm not asking for more resources. I'm not asking the government to do anything. I'm asking for the tech companies to do more. I'm asking them to give effect to the existing powers and uphold existing laws. Without their help, in very limited and strictly controlled circumstances, encryption is unaccountable. In effect, unaccountable encryption is like building a safe room for terrorists and spies, a secure place where they can plot and plan. Imagine if there was a section of a city where violent extremists could gather with privacy and impunity. Imagine if they used this safe space to discuss terrorism and sabotage and vilify Muslims, Jews, people of colour and the LGBTQIA+ community. And imagine if the security service and the police were stopped from entering that part of town to investigate and respond. This is not hypothetical. ASIO is investigating a number of Australians who belong to a nationalist and racist extremist network. They use an encrypted chat platform to communicate with offshore extremists, sharing vile propaganda, posting tips about homemade weapons and discussing how to provoke a race war. The chat room is encrypted, so ASIO's ability to investigate is seriously compromised. Obviously, we and our police partners will do everything we can to prevent terrorism or sabotage, so we're expending significant resources to monitor all the Australians involved. Having lawfully targeted access to extremist communications would be more effective and efficient. It would give us a real-time view, real-time visibility of their activities. I believe technology should not be above the rule of law. Encryption, the companies implementing it and the individuals using it should be responsible and accountable. Under law, all of us have a right to do many things, up to a point. Privacy is important, but not absolute. You lose that privilege if you engage in criminal conduct or threats to our security. In the case of the neo-Nazi chat room, should a nationalist and racist violent extremist's right to privacy outweigh the community's right to safety? In situations where we cannot access the communications to resolve security concerns, we must turn to other technical and human capabilities. Some of them capabilities involve physical risk, while others are highly resource intensive, which means we're constrained in the number of threats we can investigate at any one time. Using more overt capabilities forces us to declare our hand earlier than we'd like, tipping off the target and potentially compromising our investigation. And perversely, sometimes unaccountable encryption forces us to use even more invasive powers to investigate a security concern, conducting a physical search of a premise, for example. Worse still, we may be faced with having the knowledge of a likely threat, but having no practical way of understanding the extent of the concern. We recently investigated an Australian sharing extremist material online. We suspected he was communicating with overseas ISIL supporters, and we feared they were encouraging him to conduct a terrorist attack. But we did not know for sure because he was using encrypted communications. We used surveillance, human intelligence and other capabilities to determine if the Australian possessed the intent and capability to conduct an attack. This investigation was difficult, dangerous, time-consuming and resource-intensive. And yes, we eventually learned multiple offshore extremists had encouraged the individual to conduct an act of terrorism. Now, you might think this case demonstrates we don't need accountable encryption to be resolved to resolve our security concerns, but I believe it proves the opposite. If this individual was planning a terrorist attack, a quick and targeted access to communications could have been the difference between life and death. This is why the gap in ASIO's ability to lawfully intercept the use of encrypted communications by terrorists and spies is such a concern, particularly in the current security environment. This is why I'm asking the private sector to step up. I'm calling on big tech to establish lawful access solutions that can be applied in very tightly controlled and targeted situations, not to create backdoors or systemic weaknesses that break the internet. If the threat, evidence, safeguards and oversight are strong enough for us to obtain a warrant, they should be strong enough for the companies to help us give effect to that warrant, to make encryption accountable. And making encryption accountable will be a natural extension of the role that industry plays in helping government respond to many other risks on a national level. Industry partnerships are vital in protecting critical infrastructure, and industry is stepping up to help better protect the personal data they hold from being compromised by cyber criminals and nation states. We need them to step up again and help us protect Australia and Australians from threats to security. That requires making sure they can offer encryption to their users while providing effective and accountable law enforcement access capabilities. I started this address by referencing ASIO's 75th anniversary. The first and second Hope Royal Commissions were key milestones in that history. Justice Hope concluded that it is proper role of a security service to deal with special kinds of threats, recognising this requires a security service to exercise investigative methods that may intrude into the private lives when justified by the threat. He did not believe that protecting citizen security is inconsistent with protecting citizens' rights, including the right to privacy. To the contrary, he suggested they are complementary by stating, and I quote, "Public safety and individual liberty sustain each other." Justice Hope was ahead of his time. ASIO is committed to safeguarding the security of Australians and safeguarding the liberties, protecting from wrongs while securing their rights. Our lawful access capabilities help us defend democracy and safeguard sovereignty. They help us detect and defeat threats to life and threats to our way of life. And they help us do what we were founded to do. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions after Rhys has given his remarks.